Say tricks.
Alright, Titans, your turn. Burning Maul. Bigger hammer, more fun. But even better than that, it scorches the hell out of everything, which means more chances for ignitions. It also has a shorter cooldown than Hammer of Soul, and that means more fire nados. Which barricade you use is up to you. We are primarily going to use it to get our grenade back. Rally Barricade has a shorter cooldown, so it would be more useful for this purpose, but I like being able to fall back on the Towering Barricade's more defensive capabilities. Throwing Hammer is the preferred melee here. As long as your aim is better than mine, each time you retrieve your hammer you will be granted Cure. I did run Hammer Strike a bit, and it is a lot of fun getting easy ignitions, and it scorches the enemy for 40 plus 20, which is the same as our fusion grenades. Which you use is up to you, but for the higher end content I recommend the throwing hammer solely for its Cure. Cure instantly recovers 60 HP per stack. For those who may not know how Scorch works, when I say 40 plus 20, I mean the initial application of Scorch is for 40 stacks. It then continues to burn the enemy for an additional 20 stacks, bringing the total to 60. When any enemy reaches 100 total stacks, they go boom, and we call those ignitions. Ignitions deal 750 damage around the target that erupted, and also stun unstoppable champions. Now about those fusion grenades. This is the first part of the build that isn't optional. We are running Ashen Wake for our exotic armor, which forces us to use fusions, but these things are pretty nasty and apply 40 plus 20 Scorch, second only to incendiary grenades. 2 of these and an ignition is only moments away. Our ability kills and ignitions will give us stacks of roaring flames, up to 3 stacks. Each stack increases our ability damage for 20 seconds. The first stack is 20%, second 44%, and once fully ramped up we will be outputting an additional 73% damage from our solar abilities. Melee hits while Rolling Flames is active also apply 30 plus 10 Scorch. Soul Invictus causes our solar ability kills, Scorch kills, and Hammer of Soul impacts to create sunspots. Standing in a sunspot will refresh its duration up to 20 seconds. Sunspots gives us the Soul Invictus buff for 5 seconds. The Soul Invictus buff grants us Restoration ×1, a 40% reduction in your passive super drain, and a 100% boost to base regeneration for our grenade and melee. Restoration continuously recovers health and cannot be interrupted. 1 stack is 40 HP per second and 2 is 65 HP per second. Sunspots also deal 60 damage to enemies and apply 5 plus 3 Scorch every 1600ths of a second. With Ember of Resolve, our grenades grant Cure ×1. This is very useful depending which of our exotic weapons you decide to run later. Ember of Ashes increases how many stacks of Scorch we apply by 50%. For example, it will turn 10 stacks into 15. Ember of Eruption increases the damage radius for our ignitions. It also gives us a 10-point boost to our strength, but we aren't too worried about that because we are good Titans and we never leave our hammer behind. Ember of Char allows our ignitions to spread 40 plus Scorch to all enemies hit by the explosion, excluding the ignited target. We are running the Ashen Wake exotic gauntlets. With Ashen Wake, our fusion nades will now have fastball intrinsically, so if you don't mimic my mod setup, just make sure to not equip fastball. Our fusions also now detonate on impact and refund grenade energy on kills depending on the type of enemy. rank and files refund 25%, elites refund 50%, and mini bosses and bosses refund 100%. With well-placed fusions, you will be able to spam these all over the place, and they are our primary instrument of destruction. When we no longer have our fusion charge, we will fall back on our exotic weapons. I tried all of the solar energy slot weapons with this build, and I landed on two favorites. First up, Tommy's Matchbook. While holding down the trigger, the weapon will overheat after 20 seconds. While overheating, it gains a 99% damage increase but burns the user for 16 HP every 4/10 of a second while aiming down sights, and only 12 HP when hip firing. Once you reach critical health, Tommy's Matchbook will no longer damage you, so the weapon can't kill you, it just makes you easier to be killed. We are going to be countering this with our various sources of cure and restoration. For the best results, you will want to be passing through or standing in sunspots as often as possible. A quick recap of our other sources for healing: we got grenade kills, picking up our throwing hammer after achieving bonk, and scooping up orbs. Also, if you have the catalyst, overheating will decrease the delay on your health regeneration by 1 second, and cause every 5th shot to apply 14 plus 7 Scorch. If you are having a tough time with Tommy's Matchbook, then swap over to Sunshot. Kills with Sunshot cause the target to explode, dealing up to 255 damage and applying 10 plus 5 Scorch to affected targets. You don't have to monitor your health nearly as much with Sunshot, which makes it easier to use in higher end content. I will say though, once you get used to Tommy's Matchbook, it can be quite effective. The key to success is learning when to call it quits when you don't have an immediate source for healing. You really don't want to let the gun burn you to critical health in most situations, but you can usually trigger at least one ignition without taking too much damage in a pinch, which will kickstart the rest of the build and you'll be ramped up again in no time. Before we talk armor mods, let's talk stat distribution. You want to prioritize max resilience and max discipline. Usually, recovery is very important to me, but once our build is ramped, we wouldn't get any benefit from high recovery, so I focused on getting my intellect as high as possible. With my mod setup and high intellect, I was getting supers very often. Normally, I try to save my super for an opportune moment, but I started casting them as soon as I got them after a while. Now, on our helmet, we will be running 2 ashes to assets to help us get our supers that much quicker, followed by 1 solar siphon to take advantage of our exotic weapons. You may have noticed that I didn't mention what you should put in your kinetic and heavy slots. That's because the more I used this build, I realized I had a hard time switching off of Tommy's or Sunshot, and whenever I did, I was just disappointed. The explosion slowed down, or the damage just wasn't good enough. This is me. And these are all your likes, comments, and subs. Look how happy they make me. So happy. So I ended up just throwing a crafted shotgun and sword into those slots so they could get experience. Of course, for boss fights you will probably want to be a little wiser with your heavy slot. You can't go wrong with a solar linear fusion with bait and switch, or a good solar rocket with tracking module and auto-loading holster. Emphasis on the auto-loading holster. Anyways, on our arms we will put 1 firepower so our grenades can generate orbs for us, and 2 grenade kickstarts, which on their own will refund a little over 17% of our grenade. These are here to make lengthy grenade sprees a little easier and more consistent. They also act as a bit of a failsafe when we scuff our grenade throw. Our chest piece will have 1 charged up mod to let us have a total of 4 armor charges. When we have all 4 stacks, our grenade kickstarts will refund 42.5% of our grenade energy. You could equip a second charged up to bring that up to almost 46%, but I opted for solar reserves to help out my heavy weapon. If you need to swap something out for a resistance mod, drop the reserves first. On our legs, we will put 1 stacks on stacks to make more efficient use of our orbs for even more consistency with our grenade spam. I put 1 recuperation so we get an instant 75 HP bump on orb pickups, and 1 innervation to give us 10% grenade energy for each orb. If you want to swap out any of these, I would swap out innervation. On our class item, we will have 2 bombers to get 12.5% grenade energy when we cast barricade, and 1 reaper so that after casting that barricade, our next weapon kill will give us another orb. Our ability rotation is simple this time around. Spam fusions at enemies, try to hit at least 3, but the more the merrier. Also, the better you know the spawns for whichever activity you are running, the better you will dominate the battlefield. Once you kill any enemy with your fusion, you will get your first sunspot. Use it to heal and get your abilities even quicker. Your sunspots will also scorch enemies and trigger ignitions. Before you know it, sunspots will be all over the place and roaring flames will be fully ramped up. When you find yourself waiting on a grenade to recharge, cast barricade to get your grenade back. Cast a super, or start wreaking havoc with Tommy's Matchbook or Sunshot. Then rinse and repeat. If you weren't a pyromaniac before this build, you'll be one after. Enjoy all those explosions, and until next time, have a good one, y'all.